Today, I'll be reacting to why Larry Bird is underrated. So let's go right into the video. Let's get it. Shout out to Johnny Arnett.
It is widely accepted that Larry Bird is one of the greatest NBA players of all time, and even sneaks his way into the GOAT debate among many basketball circles. The thing is, I personally rank Larry Bird higher than most people do, as he's currently sitting in the 6th spot on my all-time list, and I even have him ranked slightly ahead of Magic Johnson, which is certainly a more uncommon opinion.
Now with me, I also have Larry Bird 6th all time, just like Johnny. But the difference is, I have Magic Johnson above Larry Bird. I have Magic Johnson number 5.
Have him ranked slightly ahead of Magic Johnson, which is certainly a more uncommon opinion. I think there's some major misconceptions to Bird's game that result in him not getting quite as much credit as I believe he deserves. And by the end of this video, I think that I can convince some of you that Larry Legend is in fact underrated. Before we get into some misconceptions, let's start with what most people already know about Bird, and I'll elaborate upon it. Over his 13-year career, Larry averaged 24.3 points on a stellar 56.4 true shooting percentage. Despite their talent-heavy history, Bird is the Celtics' all-time leading playoff scorer. So whether it was in the regular season or the postseason, he was always an efficient and lethal threat. He was obviously a legendary scorer and an incredibly efficient shooter. Larry is objectively one of the greatest three-point shooters of all time, as he's tied with Craig Hodges for the most three-point contests won in a career with a total of 3. The thing is, Hodges participated in a total of 8 three-point competitions, while Bird only participated in a total of 4. So he literally did the same amount of damage as the other all-time leader in half the amount of time. On top of all,
Yeah, Larry Bird, he won the three-point contest 3 straight times. That is crazy. That is nuts.
Same amount of damage as the other all-time leader in half the amount of time. On top of all of this, you really could make the argument that Bird is the most all-around efficient scorer of NBA history. If that seems like a stretch, then consider this. During some of his prime years, Larry went on a 5-year stretch where he had 50-40-90 percentages. Only 9 players in NBA history have achieved at least one season of 50-40-90 percentages, yet Larry did it over a 5-year stretch while putting up just about 28, 10, and 7 each night.
Don't get me wrong, Larry Bird was a hooper. Larry Bird, he had a three-point shot, he had a mid-range, he had a post-game, he was good with his offhand. Like, on offense, he have no weaknesses. And he's a great passer on offense. So yeah, that's not a bad take about Larry Bird being probably the most efficient player on the offensive end. That's not a horrible take. Larry Bird had no weaknesses on the offensive end. Now, if we talk about scoring wise, I don't know if he's top 5 like a scorer all time, but like as an offensive player in general, if you just include scoring and playmaking for yourself and others, he's definitely up there.
Season of 50-40-90 percentages, yet Larry did it over a 5-year stretch while putting up just about 28, 10, and 7 each night. The only player who has come close to that all-around efficiency over such a long period of time is actually Steve Nash. But the thing is, Nash was never primarily a scorer and averaged roughly half the amount of points that Larry did during his stretch. To efficiently score that many points on that kind of volume of all-around shot attempts is something that no one else has ever done as well as Larry Bird did. Again, maybe some of you didn't know the extent of how lethal Larry was as an all-around efficient scorer, but I do feel like that's probably the most commonly understood aspect of his game. Now for the misconceptions and the details that definitely make Larry an underrated player. There are a lot of people, especially younger basketball fans, who believe that Larry was a subpar defender. This is incredibly inaccurate, as Bird wasn't just a good defensive player, but a great one. As a 6'9" small forward, he definitely had the size and length to frustrate the offensive opponent. Sure, there is the narrative that Larry was a slow and unathletic player, and thus it affected his defensive play. This is true to a certain extent, but it's also grossly exaggerated. What Larry did have are the most important traits of a great defensive player, which are hustle, heart, intelligence, effort, and availability.
I'm one of them people, when he talking about with Larry Bird, I never thought he was a horrible defender. I just thought he was always good. I just never thought he was elite. I never thought he was an elite defender. I always thought he was good. But don't get me wrong, I never thought he was a trash defender. Larry Bird is definitely not a trash defender.
What Larry did have are the most important traits of a great defensive player, which are hustle, heart, intelligence, effort, and availability. Larry was never lacking in any of these areas. He always put in the work, and he was incredible not only at reading the defenses, but also at anticipating them.
Wait, hold up. That block was that block was crazy. Was that from Larry? Hold up. Larry Bird got up like that? Hold up.
Never lacking in any of these areas.
Give me that. Oh my goodness.
And he was incredible not only at reading the defense.
No, we looking at that again. Okay, Larry. I didn't know Larry could get up like that. Hold up.
Effort, and availability. Larry was never lacking in any of these areas.
Give me that.
He always put in the work, and he was incredible not only at reading the defenses, but also at anticipating them. Larry made 3 NBA All-Defense teams throughout the course of his career, and even finished as high as 3rd overall in the Defensive Player of the Year running in 1983. He wasn't just a solid on-ball and help defender, but he was also a terrific pickpocket, as Larry averaged a fantastic 1.7 steals per game over the course of his 13-year career. His
2 steals per game for your career, pretty much. Yeah, that's elite.
Fantastic 1.7 steals per game over the course of his 13-year career. His best evening in this area came on February 18, 1985 against the Utah Jazz, when Larry dropped 30 points, 12 rebounds, 10 assists, and 9 steals in only 3 quarters of play. Due to them absolutely destroying the Jazz, Bird didn't play a second of the 4th quarter. To this day, the NBA record for the most steals in a single game is 11.
That's crazy doing all that in 3 quarters, though. I was surprised the NBA didn't drug test him after that. That is crazy. Almost getting a quadruple double in 3 quarters. That is insane. Larry Bird was hooping out his mind.
This day, the NBA record for the most steals in a single game is 11.
That might be the greatest game he ever played in his life, low-key, though. That might be the greatest game he ever played.
To this day, the NBA record for the most steals in a single game is 11. So not only could he have easily been only the 2nd player to ever achieve the quadruple-double, but if Bird had played the 4th, he might have been the record holder for the most steals in a game. You have to be a great defensive player in order to be in a position to seize that record. On top of all of that, Bird led the entire NBA in defensive win shares a total of 4 times. That's the 4th most in NBA history. The only players ahead of him on that list are Tim Duncan, George Mikan, and Bill Russell. That is a remarkably short list of great defensive players.
Now, just to say about them advanced metrics and defensive win shares, I'm not saying Larry Bird's a bad defender, but I just want to know, do that defensive win shares look specifically at the individual player, how they play defensively, or do they look at the individual player playing defensively along with the team with them defensive win shares? I'm just curious because, no, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying Larry Bird is a bad defender, but I'm just saying with them win shares and them advanced metrics, like, do that include Larry Bird and his team or just Larry Bird by himself? I'm just curious, because sometimes with advanced metrics, they look at the player individually, but also with some metrics, they look at the player along with their team, if that makes sense. Hopefully that makes sense.
Game. You have to be a great defensive player in order to be in a position to seize that record. On top of all of that, Bird led the entire NBA in defensive win shares a total of 4 times. That's the 4th most in NBA history. The only players ahead of him on that list are Tim Duncan, George Mikan, and Bill Russell. That is a remarkably short list of great defensive players. I'm not trying to say that Bird was on the level of someone like Dennis Rodman or Scottie Pippen, but to call Larry anything other than a great defensive player is either completely ignorant or is just plain disrespect towards his game.
I think Larry Bird is a good defender. I don't think that's ignorant for me saying he's a good defender, but not great. Like he said, like Scottie Pippen or Dennis Rodman. I don't think that's ignorant. I didn't say he was bad. I just think he's good. He might be a great defender. I never saw him play. He might be a great defender. But I'm just saying, if me saying Larry Bird a good defender, I don't think that's ignorant. I don't think so.
Dennis Rodman or Scottie Pippen. But to call Larry anything other than a great defensive player is either completely ignorant or is just plain disrespect towards his game. The other key area where people underappreciate Bird was his rebounding ability, as Larry was simply
Wait, people be underestimating Larry Bird rebounding ability? That brother averaged 10 rebounds a game for his career. What? Who are these people doing that? Who's underestimating Larry Bird rebounding? Who is doing that? That is wild if people are really talking about, well, some people really talking about Larry Bird ain't that great of a rebounder. That's crazy. Now, Larry Bird, he was an excellent rebounder.
ignorant or is just plain disrespect towards his game. The other key area where people underappreciate Bird was his rebounding ability, as Larry was simply one of the greatest rebounding small forwards that the game has ever seen.
Fact.
He was aggressive and tenacious as he got as high as 11 rebounds per game in 1983. Qualities that I mentioned earlier, like his size, hustle, and intelligence, are also things that helped him as he battled on the boards. Over the course of his career, Larry averaged a whopping 10 rebounds per game, and when he was starting specifically at the small forward position, he averaged 9.5 rebounds per game. That's the third highest average among primary small forwards in NBA history. The only players ahead of him are Billy Cunningham and Elgin Baylor, who both played in the 1960s, which was easily the most inflated rebounding era of basketball history. So not only is Bird an underrated rebounder, not only is he objectively one of the all-time great rebounders, but he's also arguably the greatest rebounder ever at his position. Along with all the other skills I talked about, Larry was also a remarkably gifted facilitator. But I won't delve into that much, because like his shooting, I also think that's an area that a decent amount of people have a strong appreciation for.
Yeah, Larry Bird is most definitely a great passer. I don't think that's debatable.
I also think that's an area that a decent amount of people have a strong appreciation for. Ultimately, I think it's his solid defense and his elite rebounding that people underestimate, which is why I think he's underrated, regardless of the fact that people still refer to him as Larry Legend. Do you agree? Where does Larry Bird rank on your list of the greatest players of all time? Let me know in the comments section below. Thanks for watching as always. Make sure to like and subscribe for more basketball content, and I'll see you guys in the next video.
Shout out to Johnny Arnett with that video about Larry Bird. That was a good video. Oh yeah, but Larry Bird on the offensive end, he pretty much have no weaknesses. I just question Larry Bird on the defensive side. Like I said, he's a good defender. But Johnny said Larry Bird is a great defender, but he said he's not great like Dennis Rodman or Pippen. I'll still say Larry Bird is a good defender. If you think Larry Bird was a great defender, I'm not mad at you. I'm not mad at you for that. He did make like the NBA all-defensive team like 3 times. So if you think he was a great defender, I'm not mad at you. I'm not gonna be like, oh my God, something's wrong with you. I'm not doing that. If you think he's great, I'm not mad at you. I would say he was a good defender though. I would say he was good. But a great defender, that's still debatable. But I'm not mad at you if you think Larry Bird is a great defender. But I'm surprised though about the rebounding though. People be underappreciating his rebounding? I thought that was obvious he was a great rebounder. That's very surprising. But to answer Johnny's question at the end of the video, I have Larry Bird 6th all-time on my NBA all-time list. Drop down in the comments below your thoughts about this video, your thoughts about Larry Bird. Where do you have Larry Bird rank all-time? What you thought is the best part of Larry Bird game? Do you agree with Johnny about parts of his game that's underappreciated? What's your favorite Larry Bird moment? Do you think that game Larry Bird almost got a quadruple-double against Utah, his best game ever? Just curious to see what everyone think. Furthermore, like and subscribe. Also hit that notification bell so you won't miss another video. And I hope everyone have a blessed day. I'm out.